Well, thank you for this opportunity to present this work. What I present today is something which is just published. So as you see here, there is something which has been accepted just a few weeks ago. And it is in this journal, Environmental Modeling and Assessment. And you will find most of what I present today in this paper, but it could be made available on request if you want to have it. And anyhow, there is also, I will show you that at the end, everything is also available in the form of Cahier du GERAD, because I will publish everything here in the Cahier du GERAD. So, what is the topic? The topic is about the situation of the oil and gas producing countries facing now the transition to a world with zero net emissions. So, the particular the countries of the Gulf, but it is called the group of these countries called the GCC countries, G for Gulf Country Council. So GCC is the Gulf Country Council, and these countries are so they are oil and gas producing countries, and they are very conscious of the risk that they run. So here I just I quote now a research center, a very important group, large research center on energy in Saudi Arabia, CAPSARC. And in 2017 already they said, okay, the situation is dangerous for us, and we have to be prepared. When I say we, our company was involved in a research project based on Qatar University, and was supported by the Qatar Research National Fund. And we wanted to address the problem of assessing the transition to low carbon and smart economy in Gulf countries. And we were working with these people there, and the people there were trained in a sort of approach which is more qualitative than which is quantitative. And this approach was called multi-level perspective. And we proposed to bring a complement to this approach in the form of quantitative analysis of this. And so we associated quantitative scenario building approaches with this qualitative approach, and we tried to arrive at some conclusion concerning the strategies for these countries facing the transition to the ZLE. Do we have access to this? There is a link here. If you click on that, it should work. Oh, yeah, that's good. So here is the website of the project. And you may look here at different things, how the project was run, etc. So okay, no. I am very proud of having put some lectures. So if you want to learn about the MLP approach, you could see here. Something, maybe it works. I will see if it works. Click here to open the lecture. Just does it work? Oh yeah. Great. This is one. No, in front of the mosque.
It's not your work.
Where is the picture in?
Okay. Okay. I will stop that. So you can look at that at your leisure. Okay. So this MLP, it's interesting. It has been developed already a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, by colleagues from I think Belgium and England, and Mr. Keels, and there is a reference at the end. And they look at qualitatively at the technological transition in a future where we will have low emission, low carbon economy. And they look at that by introducing actually 3 levels of representation of the problem. The highest level is called landscape development. It's a general evolution of the world and the conditions of what we call boundary conditions for the. And then, for example, at this level, we look at the fact that you have awareness of climate change. The Paris Agreement has been signed. There is now a geopolitics of oil and gas. We could add now the war in Ukraine and all these things. And this is the general landscape. And under that, you have the evolution of what they call the socio-technical regime. Socio-technical regime is all these economic and political developments that are occurring because of this general evolution in the landscape. And here, for example, we say, for example, at this level, we have the COPs, the UNFCCC Conference of the Parties, the evolution of the demand for fossil fuels in general in the world, the policy of development in Africa, Asia, etc. All the questions relating to globalization. So these are the economic structure and more technically and more specifically, the development of carbon markets, which is a new thing, in particular in EU, some in Canada, etc. But then you have some negotiation on burden sharing, who should pay for the transition, and also all the possible ways to converge to a zero net emission regime. So these are the economic structures that are evolving and affected by this new climate. And here you have what they call the technological niches, which is actually the emergent or emerging technologies, the new technologies. Some of them would have a very big impact, and we have to identify them and see which of them are really the ones that will bring really a change in the structure we penetrate. So here you have, for example, smart energy systems. All these things related to smart grids, to intelligent, the Internet of Things, the new transport technologies, the autonomous cars, etc. The hydrogen economy, all the way to use hydrogen in different applications. And things that we were very interested into was the Directeur capture technologies, the new way to pump CO2 from the atmosphere and capturing it underground. And also other possible CDR, so carbon direct reduction technologies, and the CCS, so carbon capture and sequestration. So these are technological things, and often the discussion here is about how much it costs, when is it available, is it really efficient, blah, blah, blah. Very, very technical things. Here it is the way that they could be included in actually the economic evolution of the different systems of industrial development, etc. So this is the structure that in this NLP approach that could describe the evolution in general, the world of toward the zero net emission and the role of technologies in that. So actually, just to summarize, landscape development concerns the awareness of climate change risks, socio-technical regime developed in this landscape, the technological transformation of the world economy, the supply of fossil fuels in emerging economy. So these are important things that we will see in the moment. The equitable sharing of costs and burdens, implementation of global carbon pricing systems, and the technological niche, all the development of smart energy systems, etc., etc. So this is what I say. Again, if we look at the topics that we could put in a different level, so the landscape is more very general one. So Paris Agreement, what is meant by zero net or net zero emissions? Specifically for the Gulf countries, you have a polity issue and conflicts among, when we were there at the time, it was a conflict between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. they were not cooperating. So the Gulf cooperation country, you can see that it was not really cooperating. The new social contract that they have to develop, for example, there. Then in general, in the world, there is this concept of coalitions of the willing to foster the transition. The future for clean fossil fuels. So that was also already a long time ago. Jacques, a colleague, published a nice book of clean fossil fuels. So there is maybe a possibility to make this fuels. And then this is landscape. The socio-technical level is also called meso level. Meso for average level. And then you have all the drive toward renewables that has to be assessed. How the smart cities will develop, the development of efficient energy market, participation in international carbon market, CDR-DAC development, how it will help, and hydrogen economy. And the micro level is really the technology level. So all the aspects of efficiency, smart grids, demand response, electric mobility, CCS in industry, that technology, that are the nuts and bolts of the technological aspects. Okay, so how can I eliminate this filtrage?
Je pense qu'il y a la croix, tu as mis sur la croix.
Yeah.
Ah, voilà.
Good. So, in this framework, our colleagues, well, political science, could develop some analysis, etc. And we wanted to contribute and to help them by providing two macroeconomic models that would actually formalize a little bit the things at this meso level, at this socio-technical level. And also, it's a paper, this is just these two models, but also we had at the end also added bottom-up technology-rich model, ATEM model for Qatar, so which was actually making the transition between this meso level and the technology, the niche. So as we say in the macro model, we keep some elements of the landscape, and but we look at the socio-technical regime that emerged based on pure economic cost-benefit analysis. And we represent the element at the landscape level with some very stylized conditions. We use, for example, the concept of safe emissions budget. That when we speak of transition to net zero emission, we could say, okay, we want to have to reach this that in order to obtain an increase of temperature at the end of the 21st century, which is below 1.5 degrees. This is the Paris Agreement. And this is a relatively complicated thing to do, really, to be sure that you will reach that point. But it has been shown by several climate scientists that actually you can just summarize the policy for reaching such a target by introducing a safe emissions budget, which is 1 trillion ton of carbon from the industrial beginning of the industrial age, and that's a very simple thing. From this trillion tons of carbon, half of it has already been put in the atmosphere. So it rests approximately that to reach 1.5 or 2 degrees temperature increase and not more. And this is interesting because it simplifies a lot the whole thing. And so we decided to use a safe emission budget of 1,170 gigaton of CO2. And this budget is compatible with 2 degrees Celsius temperature increase at the end of the century, with a probability of 60%. So this will summarize the influence, the landscape condition. It will say, okay, we don't want globally on the planet to emit more than so many gigatons of CO2 for the whole horizon. And the situation for the Gulf countries will depend on that. Now at the technological niche level, we have focused on 2 important innovations. Of course, the fact that the renewable energies are more and more efficient. And second, there is now a progress in direct air capture. So that's so now. So we proposed first a macroeconomic model, which is very aggregated and very simple, but which I actually represent the challenge of development in the world for 3 great regions in the world under this constraint on emissions. And I will just move to where is it? Yeah, I had a picture of it. Okay, so the first model is really an optimal economic growth model, and we have represented the whole world in 3 coalitions. One is OECD, industrial nations. Then the second one is BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China. And the last one is the rest of the world, developing countries in Africa and Asia. And we represent these economies as in the traditional economic capital accumulation models of Mansey, etc., but using production functions of the CES type. So it's a constant elasticity of substitution type. And for the global economy, we use as production factor labor, capital, and energy. And then at the energy level, we have this energy, which corresponds to the concept of useful energy, which is used to produce economic good, could be obtained from 2 kinds of inputs: fossil energy or renewable energy. And fossil energy is produced from capital specific plants, for example, and the extracted energy from the ground, which is coal, petroleum, and oil. And at this level, we don't distinguish that. So globally, it is fossil energy that comes out of the ground. And from this energy coming out of the ground, you have emissions of carbon, and this is the CO2 problem. And for the renewable energy, we just have technology, capital, and that's it. And so we invest in that to get production of renewable energy. The same, as I said, the CO2 emissions is associated with the primary source for the fossil energy. And then there is a possibility to have negative emissions. And the negative emissions can be produced by these CDR DAC technologies. And they use capital, they use labor, and energy. That is, they use energy to, and this energy is called E3. And this energy will be a mix of fossil and renewable. Okay? And then this has to be then the V is negative emissions, which is capture. So the model is now based on 10-year periods, and we have 12 10-year periods too. So it means that we have more than 121 years of representative growth. And the state variables for the dynamic models are the state of capital and the evolution of the emission budget. And then we have control variables that are investment. And what is interesting in the model that we built, we introduced an international carbon market. And so each group of countries could actually supply each period some emission rights on the market, and then the global emissions during the period should be equivalent to the total of emission rights in Egypt, etc. And then a price of these rights will occur from the condition, the market equilibrium conditions. Okay, this is it. So globally, the model is the following one. We have here the payoff. So for one coalition, it's the sum of the population. P of beta of t is the discount factor. This is population, and this is the log of the per capita consumption. So this is a classical way of representing the utility for the group. We consider then the sum of these three coalitions of these criteria, and this is what will be optimized. The consumption is the production minus the investment cost. Okay, please. Okay. Minus the cost of extracted energy. And in order to look at what happens at the welfare level for each country, we introduce another criterion, which is for each of these countries, the summation of per capita, the discounted value of per capita consumption over the whole horizon, consumption, but including the revenue or the cost of the exchange of permits. So it means that if you are selling permits, also you have the amount of permit you put on the market, which is higher than the emissions to make, you earn money. If it is lower, if you emit more than what you put on the market, you pay something. So it takes into account the effect of the allocation of the emission rights for each group of countries. And it is the way we compute emissions. And here are the conditions for defining the price of carbon. The summation of what you put on the market at each period minus the summation of what is emitted by all countries must be positive. And there is an efficiency condition which says that the price must be equal to the marginal productivity of emissions, which is actually how much you produce if you have 1 ton more emissions in each country. And the spice must be the same for all regions. Okay, and so this is what we get after that. This is actually the solution where you have the market. You have this budget of 1,170 megaton CO2. And you see here what happens for the budget profile. It declines. So by 2060, you get globally zero net emissions. Because here you see that you have no more budget left. You have from now on you should really have to be zero. Okay. In this simulation, we gave for the global budget, we gave 40% to of the budget to the BRIC. So it was 1,070. So we said 40% for the BRIC, just 10% for OECD, and 50% for developing countries. This is you see why we put that these conditions. And we have introduced here very optimistic bounds on the capacity of sequestrating carbon. Per year, we assume that the BRIC could, not immediately, but in the future, catch 8 gigaton, OECD 5, and the rest of the world 10. So you have to realize that the countries that are exploiting oil and gas have a capacity to sequester, because you can just put the CO2 back into the depleted reservoir. They already do that for doing enhanced recovery of oil. But for the moment, it's just to increase the production of oil. But it could be also just to put back. And so in the last 2 weeks ago, The Economist, this magazine, had an interesting paper on that, saying that all over the world, the oil companies are now frantically developing or criticizing the dark technology and saying instead of getting oil out of the ground, we will be now putting CO2 back in. and this is a little bit what we say also in this. Okay, negative emissions. Also, negative emissions done by dark. So as you see, this is something that in our model start at the year 2040 and climbs very rapidly and gets at a level of more than 20 gigaton a year. So yeah, it's huge. It's huge. In the Economist paper, they say that the end is 8 gigaton for the moment. But in our simulations, it's not more than that. And you have to realize that currently the emissions of CO2 is around 40 gigaton per year. So it's huge. To put back half of it. That's a very important thing. And what happens on the emissions? The emissions decline, but from 260 it goes up a little bit and stabilize at this level. But these are the emissions, and not the net emissions, because as you remember, we had 20 more than 20 gigaton captured, and we have 20 gigaton. So you equalize, so you have, and it is stabilized. So from that on, you have zero net emissions because you capture a lot. But this is it. But what is also interesting is the evolution of per capita consumption. Per capita consumption is criteria of development. And we have to realize this thing is that brick, because we always say Russia and China, now was more people than but the fact is that in 2015 there were a lot below the level. So this is per capita in $1,000 per year. So for OECD country, the per capita consumption is $24,000 per capita. In brick, it is less than 3,000. And in the rest of the world also. So it means that actually in terms of development, it's not so much more developed, the brick, than the rest of the world. And it is far, far away from us, as most countries. But with this scenario, what happened is that actually after 100 years, in this development scenario, there is much progress here. Of course, they arrive at 50% for OECD, and we have this phenomenon where the rest of the world is better than brick, and this is due fundamentally to the fact that the population is there. And in the brick, there is a population decline. So in terms of development, the development of the brick, of China, Russia, etc., will be difficult. But in terms of development for the rest of the world, then there is a big potential. And it is where the development will really occur. But this is also where there is a huge need of energy. So here we see also the evolution of carbon price, the trading, etc. So let's say this is the view of the system, and you see also that in this very aggregate model, we have a picture of the possible development and the role of DAC in permitting this type. What is interesting that we had also other scenarios. We had what we call a green scenario, where we don't have DAC, and we just rely on introduction of clean energy. And with that, we had the PAU, which is the one which permits the comparison with the situation where we have no problem with climate. And we look now at what is this welfare criteria that I introduced before. So the one where you look at consumption plus revenue from the trading in the per capita. You look here at the market. This is the one I explained. Compared from with the BAU, you see that the market will generate a loss of welfare of 9% for brick, 5% for OECD, and 6% for the rest of the world. But it is the reduction of welfare. If you look at the green where you don't have the DAC, then respectively it will be 13%, 11%, and 9%. So then you see that the cost is obviously much higher. So this is the first thing that we got from this analysis. And from this analysis, we see that in a very simple way, but the problem, the general problem is a problem of development. And the rest of the world, Africa and Asia, has to develop. They need a lot of energy to do that. And if you just rely on renewable energy, etc., it's possible, but they will not be able to develop very much. So that, but it was very regulated. Now we say, okay, there will be maybe introduction of this technology, dark technology, etc. But now, if we want to look at what is the impact for the oil and gas developing countries, we have to be more detailed than just this big aggregate of countries. So we propose another model. Actually, we have already developed such a model, and I'll show you in particular, we published our paper for long-term steady state economy with this type. And the other model is a model where we have a detailed, more detailed description of the countries in the world, and we focus on the competition between the different countries for using their emission permits, their budget. And so the model is more complicated, and it has actually the structure of a dynamic game model. So in this new model, we use actually a general equilibrium, detailed general equilibrium model, which is called Séminaire du GERAD, which is developed by Mark Yell and Belfeld. And this model is used to provide us with an estimate or an evaluation of the marginal cost of abatement for each country, for each group of countries that is. So what the fundamental element here is the emissions. The emissions are initial emissions minus the abatement, and there will be a cost, an abatement cost for this quantity Q. And then we have, as before, the budget, the safety emission budget. Each country will have a share of that, and we again introduce a market like in the other one, but now we represent exactly the strategy use of the emission rights by introducing actually the impact of the supply of emission rights on the price of carbon and on the emission level. So you see that these conditions are obtained by obtaining as before here, the fact that the total supply, which is called big omega T, must be equal to the total emissions, and the price is the marginal cost of abatement. And you see that here we can have the impact, the derivative with respect of the supply on the price, and the derivative of the emissions with respect to the supply. And with that, we can now formulate a model where the payoffs for each country is defined by the sum discounted minus the discounted sum of abatement cost, and but also we take into consideration, as before in the welfare, the revenue or the payment for emissions trading. And then we compute a Nash equilibrium. So we have a strategic exploitation of their share of the emissions budgets. This is why this is something which is oriented toward the fairness in the sharing of this emission-based use. So the conditions for a Nash equilibrium are complementarity conditions that are obtained from these derivatives that we did before. And so we have these conditions. So I don't enter into the details of the maths, but this is standard. And this is what we get. So if you look at here, it's not a model with the capital accumulation, etc. It's a model where you have for each period actually the general equilibrium model, which is repeated with conditions passing from one period to the next. But there is not an optimization of accumulation of capital. It's something which is implicit in the model. But what is dynamic is the exploitation of the budget. There you see, if you have DAC or if you don't have DAC. So in the market, you see, for example, the price in now it's $2010, and it's in 2030 we have a price of carbon which is $775 per ton of CO2. And if DAC is introduced, then the price is 480, so much lower. The cost in percent of discounted GDP is 3.8% if you don't have DAC, and it is 2.8%. So you have 1% less if you have DAC. And here it is the okay. This is the BIU. This is what you get when you want to eliminate, to converge to zero net emissions. And this is abatement. And if you have DAC, as you see, instead of going there, you go there. And here there are the emissions, and there are the DAC, which compensate. So this is first summary. And what's more is now, in order to, as I said before, that is 2.8%, more precisely 2.84%, the welfare cost globally. But if you allocate the safety budget in a certain way, you can actually equalize this welfare cost among the different countries. So in this application, we looked at the following countries. We had USA, Europe, China, India, Russia, GCC, other exporting energy countries, or the other countries, the Asia, Latin America, the rest of the world. So we have more detailed. And here you see the share of the budget which is allocated to each of these groups. So you get that this 1,170 gigaton, 9% of it go to USA, 4% to Europe, 19% to China, 6%, 6.5% to India, 7% to Russia, 8.8% to GCC countries, 15.7% to other exporting countries, but the rest of the world, 16%. And here you see that with this allocation, the welfare cost is the same for everybody. And this is what we call a Rawlsian rule, from Rawls, and Rawls, theory of justice, where you say that to be fair, you should actually optimize the less privileged group. So it means that you have to equalize. So, and here you will look at the paper to understand very much that. But what is interesting is to look at the components of the cost. And you see that actually this allocation is something that is very important, because you look at emissions trading, 11% of the cost is actually negative. So it's actually a revenue. And so in order to reach the 284% for them, they have to be able to sell a lot of permits that give them a compensation for the very high cost. And GTT is the gains in the terms, or the loss in the terms of trade. The GTT is 5.55%, means that this is what they lose. They lose because the price of oil will crumble. And so they will lose their revenue. It was the first slide I showed where the CAPSAC say that in the future, the price of oil will be zero, and that's it. So so they lose a lot in the terms of trade. They spend a lot in developing DAC. They spend a lot in abating, and they don't do much of BCCS, but they earn a lot because they have 8% of the emission rights that they're given today. This is in this solution. I can show you here what happens if we don't have this allocation of where we have two allocations of this budget, one which is grandfathering. So grandfathering means that you allocate this emissions budget as in proportion to the current emissions of these nations. So it means that USA, China, etc. And as it is what happens, you have USA, which gets 16%, was 9 the case, China 27, etc. But GCC gets 2.9%, so not much, and the rest of the world 7.7%. And in that case, the welfare cost for the GCC in grandfathering is 11%. It's not 284, and it's 11. It's still 280 for the world as a whole, but then the GCC pays a lot. Actually, it's the highest cost. If we have a per capita allocation, it means that you allocate budget according to the population level. I mean, that's quite interesting to see here that it's 11 the world. Because for the GCC countries, so they lose 13.8%. So of course they're not populous region, and so this is But in that case, of course, the population regions like India and the rest of the world are benefiting. Okay, and we could look here at what is the welfare loss in terms of the constraint and the 2-degree threshold and the evolution of price. Okay, so what are the clues that have been provided by the macroeconomic scenarios? So first, the technical progress on renewable energy makes them dominant even in the BAU scenario. So there will be a strong penetration of renewables in the future. But nevertheless, there will be too high emissions in the BAU scenario. Making a full transition to renewables in order to stabilize the temperature change at 2 degrees would generate a large welfare cost in terms of lost consumption, in particular for emerging and developing countries. If you say just no DAC, but if you have DAC availability, this mitigates the welfare losses and also the standard asset cost for the developing countries, the oil exporting countries. The Gulf countries have a comparative advantage in deploying DAC due to their easy access to natural gas as primary energy for doing that, and depleted oil and gas reservoirs as storage facilities. And an effective international carbon market is an essential part of the DAC development strategy. That is first of all. In order to complete the picture at the technology level, we also developed an ETEM model for Qatar. ETEM is Energy Technology Environment Model, which is a model like TIMES, very similar, that we developed and that we use in different settings. And so we had a very detailed technology-rich model for Qatar. We just developed it for Qatar, not for the other GCC countries. And so we could see what would be the evolution of the energy system in Qatar in their evolution toward net zero emission or zero net emissions if there is a possibility to develop an hydrogen market and also DAC. And so I will not tell you that it's in the paper. You can see that. And so at the end, the conclusion. Jim Crane, who is an American colleague, has analyzed a few years ago the possible climate strategies for oil and gas production countries. He took the case of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as an example, and he said there are 3 types of climate strategy that he called dig in, join in, throw in. So in dig in, you say, okay, the Paris Agreement is aspirational, but it's not binding. It will not work. So we just try to insulate the hydrocarbon sector against. So that's it. Yeah. Joining in, you engage in pursuing economically rational domestic energy policies that provide benefits in reducing GHG emissions. So you say we accompany the thing, and in throwing, strategy producer governments concede that climate change is inevitable, but argue that damage caused by anthropogenic GHG is preferable to costly GHG mitigation in line with Paris goal. So they say, okay, it would be nice, but it's too costly. So well, that's it. And so this is the situation. In our scenario-based analysis, we could actually provide some rationale for the following qualitative conclusions. First, the climate change issue is now recognized everywhere. There is no future for GCC member states in adopting an obstructionist strategy, because it seems that there will be, everybody now agrees that, except if Donald Trump gets reelected. Because what is very important is the fact that the US moved in the direction. The options offered by CCS, dark hydrogen economy, contribute to foster a mix of dig-in and join-in types of strategy. On one side, one works on preserving the economic value of fossil fuels, while on the other side, one decarbonizes entirely the local economy. CCS and CDR technologies are essential to achieving the ZE regime globally and also locally. In the scenario that we studied, the cumulative emission budget was not allowed to be exceeded. So we don't have this overshooting. Therefore, there is no incentive to adopt a throw-in strategy. And GCC countries could be more proactive in the coming negotiations and aim at defining a governance based on equalizing the relative welfare losses among groups of countries. They should insist on that. There has been a few talks about indemnification for oil and gas producing countries, but they should be more convincing on that. They could develop their own programs of clean fossil fuel, in particular CCS and hydrogen extraction. GCC countries must prepare to the change in oil and gas demand patterns caused by the advent of electric mobility and smart energy systems. There will be a sharp reduction of refined products for automobiles, etc. All these transitional policies will require an effort to diversify the economies of GCC member states and to change their polity and social contract. For the moment, the social contract, you don't pay energy. But it does keep changing. Okay, and so this, of course, there are more on the paper that I gave at the beginning. There is more consideration by our colleagues. And as I said, you will find a lot of what I say in more details in this Cahier du GERAD. This is it's only my name here because I made a search under my name, but there are co-authors, of course. This is the paper I cited at the beginning. This is the paper on Qatar. This is the paper on the compact or model, which has been published in Operations Research Letters. And here is an interesting paper that we wrote with Olivier on the steady state version of the model, because it's interesting because we look at actually what should be the boundary condition at the end of the century. So when we reach this situation of net zero, it has to be continued. So then we say, okay, sustainable development. So mathematically, we call it steady state. And so we look at the steady state equilibrium of these different countries. And there is a really interesting paper. The paper on the GAME paper is more detailed in this climatic change paper that we published with all these colleagues from Qatar, and this is the paper I published. Rapidly in the references, Alain is a geographer at Oxford and is one of the persons who defended the concept of carbon budget. Frank Gills is the guy who developed the multi-level perspective. Then for CO2 capturing, we got Knas. Herzog is a guy from MIT. A very important publication is this one. Keith, he was at University of Alberta. He was in Calgary, and he developed there this process of capturing CO2 using a gas part of the technology, natural gas. And in this Joule paper, they make a complete economic analysis of that process, and it shows that the legalized cost should be around $300 per ton. It's a very, very interesting. So these are other papers like that. That guy, Ken is the guy I cited at the end, and that's it. Okay, I am finished.